So I'm in section 1 of the Montana Payroll Topics area in Moodle. And the way that I'm going to do these last 4 areas of content delivery is these are all documents that I've compiled from different agencies. So it's not so much that you're going to go home and read it per se, but you need to, they're used as resources. And what I mean by that is the final in this class is going to be really heavily weighted towards Montana, and it's all open book and open note. So these are your resources. So what I'm going to do is point out to you where the information that's going to be most useful for you in all this is. And so really what I'm trying to do is familiarize you with the documentation itself, and then you're going to need to come up with your own system of how you're going to organize the resources to make it useful for you for the final. And it's also just if you have any intention of going into a business or processing payroll, this is the data that you'll use to do that from a Montana perspective. So we've talked about independent contractors versus employees. I just wanted to spend a little bit of time, or actually the bulk of today, talking about this topic in a little bit more detail and giving you the resources where you would go to identify any issues that you might have around this. So the first thing I want to point out is that no. There we go. And you can see I penciled it in up here at the top. There's old law that we used to go by that the IRS gave us for years, and I'm going to look at that in a second. And that's evolved into what we now call the new law. And the new law has been around quite a while, probably 10, 12 years. But this first little blurb here talks about how a lot of businesses have no idea how much money it will cost them if they have been misclassifying people and then, get sued or found out, or there's a claim for the Department of Labor and Industry. You can owe as an employer. So now I'm on the second paragraph. You can owe up to 3 years of FICA and FIT and FUTA and SUTA on people you've misclassified.
Can it be more than that if they feel like you misclassified them on purpose?
Yes, and I think that then is, that might even be in perpetuity. They can go back as far. Yeah, if you've intentionally misclassified, of course I don't want to treat you as employees. I've got to pay taxes on you. I've got to do W-2s. I've got to pay workers' comp. It's got a whole nother level of work for me. So if I've done that purposefully, yeah, that's generally not the situation that I've come across. It's just people don't know, So it's really important that we do know. And these are not new terms to you, but they go into a little bit more detail. So what is behavioral control? And again, I'm not going to just sit up here and read to you or, describe what the bullets are, but you definitely have to be conversant with what is behavioral control. That says, when do you show up for work? How do you do your job? Here's the software or the tools or the processes we use to accomplish your work. That is behavioral control. And if I have behavioral control over you, that's pretty strongly indicative that you're my employee and not my independent contractor. Not always, and it's not a checklist, but it's guidance as to how to decide. Financial control. Do I have a right to, do I have financial control over you? So we look at 4 different things here. Your unreimbursed business expenses. So normally as an employee, you shouldn't have to spend a lot of money out of your pocket to do your job. It's not always true. For example, I have to keep my CPA license up, and I have to do 40 hours a year of continuing education, and it's expensive. It's like $50 an hour. So I'm out of pocket a couple $1,000s to keep my license up. And I have to actually pay to renew it for $285. So it's not that it never happens, but that's indicative, more indicative of an independent contractor. How much do you have invested in the tools to do your job? How much more do I make my services available to the rest of the market? And then this is really a biggie. The extent to which a worker can realize a profit or a loss. Does it sound, do you think it's common for an employee to go to work and at the end of the day be in the hole? No. But could that describe an independent contractor? Yeah, sure. I underbid the job, right? So I've got to pay all my employees, but there's nothing, I can incur a loss as an independent. And then last is the type of relationship. What are the facts of the relationship? What does everybody think's going on? Are you sending me a 1099 or a W-2? Did I do a W-9 or a W-4 up front? So those kinds of things. So this new law, these three categories evolved from this old law. And if you look down that, you can see that was kind of a checklist. And this was what the IRS would come into your business with, this kind of checklist. This has migrated into those three areas we just looked at. So it's less check the boxy and more general guidance. It's still a gray area. I would caution anybody that has a business. I actually just dealt with this with a client. If you've got people doing similar kinds of stuff and some are classified as employees and some are classified as independent, that can get very tricky very quickly. Okay, it's very easy there for a taxing authority to say you're misclassifying. Okay, obviously when I've tagged something as important, you should take a look at that. This again is reiterating with even more detail. When you see something like this is a revenue ruling that the IRS has published. Or, let's see, do we have any other code sections quoted? This just goes into a little bit more case law where the IRS has heard, actually heard it's come to the courts, tax courts, and they've ruled on this. So that's indicative that it's something the IRS feels pretty strongly about. They put resources into ruling it. So please take a look at this. Here again is another tax. This is a tax court case, evidently. So just go ahead and read through this. These are all current case law and current rulings that help us to dig a little deeper into it. Everything now with the shared economy with like Uber drivers or DoorDash drivers or what's another example of something like that? In the cities, the maids on call that go around and do the cleaning on call. There's a lot of cases in the courts right now that are trying to determine. Uber drivers are saying, listen, really, we are employees. We have to use your app. Our car has to pass some sort of inspection. We don't get to pick up a driver and then decide how we get them from point A to point B. It's all programmed into GPS. I mean, they don't get to negotiate the payment terms. I mean, Uber sets the price. So really, I mean, when you look at that, the only thing that makes an Uber driver even look independent is that he or she has an investment in tools, i.e. their car, right? And they can choose their own time to work. Okay, yeah, how else could we make a strong case that they're independent? Do you have to work a set amount of time to stay certified? I mean, could I just drop off the planet for 15 months and then jump back in and no problem? Okay, so that's fairly strong. But all the rest of the control's taken away, isn't it? How you do your job. Yeah, it's.
Well, you have requirements on the car you get, but you can't get any car you want within those requirements. So,
Right.
I know it has to be a newer vehicle with certain.
4 doors, obviously.
Something like that, yeah, but as far as whether you get a truck or Hummer or Honda Civic or something
Right.
like that,
Yeah, yeah, I mean, they're all interesting cases, you know. Obviously, there's a lot of, lobbying money being spent on this because if Uber all of a sudden has to reclassify everybody as employees, that's going to make a hell of a dent in their profit and loss statement, right? Because they've got all these taxes to pay now.
Are taxi drivers considered independent contractors?
You know, it's different in different cities. In New York, you buy you're like a franchisee. And no, you're independent contractor. And I mean, like the licenses are like $500,000 in New York City. I can't imagine they cost that much anymore because I can't imagine they're that valuable anymore now that, we have Uber. So it depends. Okay, you guys have seen this. Who do I give these to? I don't give them to employees, I give them to my independent contractor, right? And they fill it out, and you can see really, all it asks is your name, what are you? Are you a sole proprietor, a C Corp, an S Corp, what are you? Your address, and most importantly, your social security or your TIN. And basically then I just use that to issue you your 1099 at the end of the year. Okay, now this is one of the key things we're going to be working on this unit is ICEC, an Independent Contractor Exemption Certificate. And let's be really clear on what that means. So I say that I'm a flooring contractor, and you guys are all work for me. You're my employees. So I own a flooring contractor business. You're all my employees, and I go out and bid jobs with general contractors, and I want to exempt myself from workers' comp because I don't really install flooring. I'm the gal that drives around in her big truck and makes sure you guys are all doing what you need to do and the clients are happy and blah, blah, blah. Okay? So when we talk about this in ICEC, I can't ever exempt you guys from workers' comp. I'm just exempting myself from workers' comp, okay? I've always got to pay on you, you're my employees. But I don't want to pay on myself. So if you show up, so you're going to go ahead and, this is from the Montana Department of Labor and Industry. So go ahead and read through this. This is, here we go. And we're going to practice this, doing an IC exemption certificate. So I need to apply to the DOLI to get exempted from having to do my own workers' compensation. And if they grant me that, then I don't have to cover myself under workers' comp or SUTA. And that can save me quite a bit of money. And I may choose to do that. A lot of people do it. And it's where it makes me nervous and where I hate it is like, you do siding for houses and you spend your whole life up on a ladder and it's just you, Maddie Hamilton siding. Workers' comp's going to be expensive for you. And you probably operate on a pretty thin margin. So you're going to come to me as your accountant and say, I want an exemption certificate. What am I going to say to you? I'm going to say, yikes, exactly. You fall off that ladder, girlfriend. You have specifically excluded yourself from workers' comp. I'm sorry you broke your back and are a paraplegic, but you're not covered for time off work. You're not covered for medical. You're not covered for retraining. So that's where it gets really hairy. It's a big gamble. And I have a hard time, young people particularly, oh, nothing's going to happen to me. I'm impervious. And it's like, yeah, until you're not. I've got a physical therapist who isn't covered because the workers' comp is quite high on PTs because it's such, there's a lot of manual lifting and moving, and oftentimes with people that weigh a whole bunch more than you do. And it's a very, particularly for soft tissue damage, it's a very dangerous job. They're trained in body mechanics, certainly, but At any rate, so that's what this is. That's what an ICEC is. You have to apply to exempt yourself.
Maybe they could slip on something that would hurt.
Sure, of course you can.
Are there any jobs that you feel like the applicant's fine to be?
I exempt myself. I sit in my tax business at home, in my office, in my jammies on a computer. I mean, shy of like sticking my tongue into a socket in my office, I don't know how I would hurt myself, or tripping over my dog. I mean, I'm not going to pay workers' comp or SUTA on myself. There's no reason to. If I employed you, I would have to pay it on you. And I would want to, because now you're coming into my house. And yeah, you could be walking up my front doorstep in the winter and slide and go down. Yeah, heck yeah, I'm going to want you covered for workers' comp when you're coming, into my home office to work. And I have done, I don't do it anymore, but I did it a number of years ago with a couple students that came in and needed some hours, and I needed some help, and they worked for me. And yeah, you definitely want to be, A, you've got to legally, but B, you want to do that to protect yourself. Okay, so this is the application. You can see up here that it's valid for 2 years. You have to pay $125, and it tells you exactly what you have to do here. Complete this form. Then there's an attached waiver form I'm going to show you that you've got to go and initial all these things. Yeah, I understand it, I understand it, I understand it. They want you to attach photocopies of business documentation to prove that you're truly an independent contractor. And then you send all the information here to the ICCU. So you're going to be filling out one of these for your first assignment. So let's take a peek at it. Obviously, this stuff is all name and address, and this is important. Which trade, occupation, or profession am I applying for? Physical therapist, building sider, floor cover installer, whatever it is specifically that you want to cover. And if you do more than one thing, make sure that you put them all in there. What's your business structure? Am I a sole prop? Am I a partnership? What am I?
What is that CR? Notice on your things, labeled construction.
I don't know. Let's go see if we can find that on the instruction page. Oh, instruction page is in here. What is that? I don't know. Needs CR. Oh, contractor registration.
Oh,
Needs a contractor registration number. Okay, and then you sign it, and you've got to get it notarized. And then this is the second page where you have to do all these initial everything separately to make so it's 100% that you understand what you're signing away, and then notarize it. This is kind of interesting. This is how you piece together the points to show, and you need to get to 15 points to show that you are in fact independent. So obviously these categories here, the things in these categories are higher. The 3-point categories, you got to have more of them, and the 1.5 point categories are not as indicative. So again, I'm not going to sit up here and read to you, but please make sure that you're familiar from a resource standpoint. So, in the past people, maybe you print these out and you highlight things, or you tab things, or whatever you want to do to organize yourself, or maybe you're happy keeping it digitally. But whatever you need to do to organize yourself so that you know where this is. Okay, let's take a look then at the second section today too, which is the contractor registration, David, that you were just asking about. So contractor registration is required in Montana for anybody that is in basically the building industry. It's $53. It gets you a 2-year period, and you've got to show them that you've got workers' comp. And the problem is it's one of those things, it's required, but it's not enforced or penalized if you don't do it. But the reason you want to do it, if you're a drywaller, is you get on a list of registered contractors with the state, so that Olive Garden's coming to Missoula and they want to see a list of registered drywallers, you're on it. You can bid it, right? So, I mean, it's only $53 for 2 years. So what happened, the history behind it, as it was passed in the mid-90s, which was a time in Montana, well, in western Montana particularly, of sort of early, pretty high trajectory growth in the building industry. And what happened in the mid to late 80s and early 90s is there was just like this lull in building. And a lot of our mills closed, a lot of our buildings were boarded up. Things were pretty grim around here. And a lot of those years, the old contractors, really struggled to make ends meet. But then this boom started in the early 90s, and people flocked here from out of state, right? I'm a drywaller, I'm a floor layer, I'm a painter, I'm a electrician, whatever. And they were kind of coming in and underbidding our local guys because they weren't, paying workers' comp, and they weren't paying SUTA, and they were doing a lot of things kind of on the side. And our contractors were pissed off because they had, struggled through this decade of like barely making ends meet. So they pressured the legislature to pass this law that requires contractor registration before you can work on any commercial or residential job. And at that point in time, there were penalties associated with it. You had to show your workers' comp. You had to post a bond. That was the other thing. People were coming in and doing work and then disappearing, and then, your plumbing system was failing, and it's like, where do I get a hold of the company that just, laid plumbing in my new subdevelopment? So, fly-by-night business, and there's a lot of that. Yeah, in fact, we've still got some repercussions in the community from some of that. So at any rate, the goal of SB 354 was to level the playing field by making sure that everybody had to pay the same overhead and abide by the same laws. It's lost a lot of its teeth because there's no penalties anymore associated with it. But we still have to do it. Go ahead and read through these exemptions. You don't have to do this if you are working on your own property. This is Montana. Do you know what MCA stands for? So that's Montana law. It stands for Montana Code Annotated, which is a fancy way of saying our state law. So this is actually embedded in MCA.
Does Montana right to work state?
Yes.
And how does stuff like this affect unions?
I mean, you just have to be compliant. You can't negotiate this out of a union contract.
Any of the contractors or anything like that, that unions require, certain unions require certain levels?
Sure, and that's in addition to. Yeah. So we're going to be filling out one of these too. This is your contractor registration form, and it also goes to DOLI, and you need to read the instructions and fill out, this is all just the basic business name and everything. This is asking about what kind of construction are you in, how many people work for you, and then this is if you are an owner or a partner, you've got to fill out for each owner, each partner, or each director, and it's got to match the record of ownership that you file with Montana Secretary of State. So let me kind of explain that briefly. When you start a business in Montana, you register with the Secretary of State. You tell them, Michaela and I are going to start a nail salon together, and we're partners. And she's a 40% owner and I'm a 60% owner. We would file something called Articles of Partnership that lays out how we share the profit, how we share the loss, how we share the liability if we dissolve. Or maybe the 5 of you go together and you form a corporation. And you would file Articles of Incorporation with the Montana Secretary of State. So depending upon what you're going to be, there's different documents you file. And what they're saying up here is that the names down here for the contractor registration has to match what's on file with the Montana Secretary of State.
Now, do each separate person pay the 53 or?
No, nope, it's one shot for the organization. Okay, so let's take a look then at what you're doing for your first assignment. And actually, let me just give you a minute to read this.
The first assignment or all of them?
No, just the first one. Okay, so first off, what's the situation?
He has an on-site job that he wants to finish, but doesn't know whether he should hire employees or get contractors.
Right, but what Laurel just said is key. So we've got a little shop in Hamilton that's been going down the road, what is it? It's not that big, we're 12 employees. And now they've gotten a bid, I mean, they've got their job, they put out a bid, and they've got a job that's out of their normal scope, right? And you're the payroll person for our gentleman who owns it, Mr. Edward Hansen. And he needs some guidance from you. Okay, so one thing you're going to do is you're going to write a memo to him. Make sure you look up how to do a memo. It's not the same as a letter because it's internal, right? So you're going to write a memo to him, and you're going to make sure that you've got an introduction, answer his 2 questions, and then provide a conclusion. I recommend to him what you think he should do. And his 2 questions are, how do I judge whether somebody's an independent contractor or employee? I don't know anything about it. How do I make that decision? And secondly, what are the pros and cons of each? And then you're going to make a recommendation to him based on what you know about IC versus employee and that's specific to this situation. Okay? And kind of really think through this whole idea of the pros and cons. I mean, spend some time kind of maybe trying to list them out and then which ones do you think are the most compelling. I mean, I don't want you to just do a data dump of everything you can think of, but I want you to try and spend some time identifying what you think the most important things are. And then secondly, you just come on with it and you realize he doesn't have a contractor registration, so he needs that. And also, you talk to him about what a ICEC is. And Mr. Hansen doesn't want to be workers' comp on himself. He doesn't need to. He just drives around in his truck. He's got auto and medical that would cover anything that happened to him in his truck. Okay. So, is that a hot link for you on your, if you have to download it before you can make sure that? I think if you download it, I'm not does it go to DOLI? It doesn't go to DOLI. Well, let's see, let's get it off of the Moodle platform. You can't, it won't do it on Moodle. Save to the desktop. And then let's go here. Oh yeah, I can see it's not. Huh. Okay. Well, let's go find this then. Okay, DOLI, dli.mt.gov. And I could just give you the forms, and I mean, I guess you could just print them from the, but I want you to spend some time on part of it, is spending some time on the website and learning where to find the forms. Okay, because that gives you the part that's navigating. So on Monday, you're going to give me the memo. You're going to give me the contractor registration form completed. You can scan it, but don't worry about printing it. Because I don't think they are fillable in forms. And don't forget to attach the waiver. That's a part of the ICEC. Right, so you're going to do you're going to have the memo, you're going to have the independent contractor exemption certificate, attach the waiver with and you're giving, so you're preparing the paperwork and giving it to Mr. Hanson to sign. Right? So what you're really giving me is what you would be giving your boss. Here's my memo, here's the paperwork for your signature.
I'm curious about these categories. Do we know the category?
So the points, no, you don't have enough information to do that. But I do want you to take a look at those categories, because that might be something I could ask you about on the final. Okay. Great work. Happy weekend.